Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Recently, one of the greatest comedians of all time revealed that in his Chappelle show deal with Comedy Central, he technically never got paid. Apparently what happened is he signed a contract, and the contract had a clause in it where more or less he couldn't get paid because he didn't want to fulfill his requirements and his end of the contract. So apparently Comedy Central didn't have to pay him what they owed him. And he did a whole like stand-up, 18-minute stand-up on it called Unforgiven. It's on his YouTube, on his Instagram, and I think it's on Netflix. You guys should check it out. Dave Chappelle uses profanity, just so you guys know. Forewarning if you're watching this with kids in the car. I don't think there's any profanity in the clip I'm about to show, but I wanted to highlight something because I think there's a lot here in terms of business, in terms of how to build businesses, in terms of how to connect all these dots, and tie it into a verse for you guys. So check this out. This is Dave Chappelle. This is on Twitter. It's a clip I really wanted to show you. He's talking to his agent and if he could do anything about this. Now, if you guys didn't know, more or less what happened was Dave Chappelle had a show at Comedy Central. Comedy Central wanted him to continue doing a show. He didn't want to do the show anymore. He up and leaves. He just felt like the show was against his morals at the time. He up and leaves, and they kind of smear him in the media, on top of which they don't pay him, on top of which, it takes him a while to rebuild his career. And then he finds out that recently Netflix put the Chappelle show, and he has a direct deal with Netflix, and he basically got it pulled from Netflix. I think HBO Max still has it up. And this is the clip, him talking about his agent. And he said, his agent said he can't do anything about it because the paperwork was the contract. It was, he had it locked in. So check this clip out. This is very interesting. And I want to really, really, really highlight one specific part that I think will tie into where we are as a people. Check this out.
If you want something done right, I guess you got to do it yourself. So I'm not going to the agents. I'm coming to my real boss. I'm coming to you.
So he says he talked to his agent. He could not get the show pulled. He couldn't do anything legally about it. He says, listen, the contract is the contract. And he said, well, F you to the agent, more or less. And he says, so now I'm coming directly to you, my real boss. Who's his real boss? His audience, right? His people. He's coming to his real boss, his audience, his real people, the people that are ultimately his boss, which is his audience. And he comes to them and he makes this request of them.
I'm begging you, if you ever liked me, if you ever think there was anything worthwhile about me, I'm begging you, please don't watch that show. I'm not asking you to boycott any network. Boycott me. Boycott Chappelle's show. Do not watch it unless they pay me.
Do not watch it unless they pay me. Okay. So Dave Chappelle, he talks about him having, a quote unquote good deal initially. However, it positioned him to not be able to redo the show. He doesn't even own the name Chappelle Show. Imagine that. Imagine your last name not being owned by you when it comes to show, right? That's kind of crazy, right? And he's like, I signed a contract, but doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. I thought that was really, really interesting, right? Sometimes there's agreements, but doesn't make it right. And he says, I'm coming to my real boss. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. And I'm going to come back to this verse. I know you guys are like, man, Ruslan really likes this verse. Listen, I'm going to keep hammering this home because I think there's so much in here. I've been stuck on this verse. And it's, again, this verse from 1 Thessalonians 4, right? And it says, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. Remember, Dave Chappelle quit Comedy Central, had like a $50 million deal with Comedy Central, quit. I didn't know he didn't get paid, by the way. I thought he was set. He quit and literally went to Africa, and then he went and moved and lived. I think he was already living there, but lived on his farm in Ohio in a small town. This man literally lived a quiet life, right? This man literally lived a quiet life. By the way, this video isn't an endorsement of everything Dave Chappelle supports. I know some of you Pharisees are going to be in the comments like, Dave Chappelle's not Christian. That's not what this is about, okay? We can extract biblical truth even from people who aren't followers of Jesus, right? And this is him living this out, right? He quits this big show. You guys don't remember the Chappelle show. I was a fan of it when it was coming out. I was new to the faith. And he says, and so this is Paul, and I think Dave Chappelle lived this out. He says, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, right? You should mind your own business. Go mind your own business. Work with your own hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody, right? So your daily life may win the respect of outsiders. Okay. Now, I don't know, this is specifically talking to Christians, but I think there's something in your daily life to get someone as good of a comedian as Dave Chappelle is. Maybe he's just naturally talented, but that is a huge craft to develop. I got friends that are comedians in New York City, and it takes a lot. I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6 open mics a night, 5 nights a week, putting in work to just get good enough to do a 15-minute set, right? My buddy Rufat, who's a friend of the channel, you guys could go check out that interview. He's a stand-up comedian in New York. He talks about it is a tough crowd. It is a tough way to build it up. So I think there's something about this daily life that you have to develop, this discipline, this consistency, this grind, right? This hard work, so that you can be in a spot to what? Win the respect of outsiders, to win the respect of people that are outside of your direct influence group. And that's so you will not be dependent on anybody. What's beautiful about that clip, what's beautiful about that Dave Chappelle clip, is that he's won the respect of so many people that don't know him personally. All of us who consume his content. And again, it's not an endorsement of his content. I think he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, stand-up comedian of all time. I think that's an amazing art form. He's won the respect of so many people that he's not dependent on anybody. He's not dependent on any network, right? That this man could just go on and tour for the rest of his life, never have to be on Netflix. But he's won the respect of so many people that what? That he can ask Netflix to take down his show, and just because they do business with him, they like him, not because they have to, but just because of him winning the respect, him building a direct relationship with his audience, who he said is ultimately his boss. He says ultimately his boss, right? That is pretty powerful. That is pretty powerful. That is not a spiritual salvation gospel message. That is a very practical, pragmatic approach to how, in this new climate, where clearly jobs aren't stable. Clearly a job is not as stable as it was 5 years ago. Clearly a college degree isn't going to get you what it got you 20 years ago, right? Clearly these things are not what they once were, and yet we keep idolizing them, and young people keep graduating high school, going hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but not being afforded the opportunity to start a business. How are you going to give a kid $100,000 to go in college student loan debt, but not allow them to start a business, or not give them any funding to start a business? That's backwards to me, right? So the big idea, become useful, develop skills, win the respect of outsiders, so you will not be dependent on anybody. Dave Chappelle is extremely sharp and extremely self-aware that what? That his audience is his ultimate boss. And in the same way, ultimately, I don't have a boss. God is my boss. My wife is my boss. But my ultimate boss is you guys. You guys get to decide. That's why I stop and I do Zoom calls and I let you guys pick the next site. Ultimately, you guys are my boss. You guys get to pick. You guys get to choose. And if you guys find enough value, when we do a Bless God collection that's coming out Black Friday, you guys will get behind it. When you guys find enough value, you will partner on Patreon or buy some of my music or buy some merchandise. You guys are the ultimate boss. It's not about any of these other variables. And so I think it's important for us just to be aware on where we are as a society, on where we are as a people, that those stable jobs that were aren't so stable anymore. That college degree isn't as valuable as it was 20 years ago, and that ultimately developing a direct relationship with an audience in an area that you're passionate about, that you could speak on about with expertise, is ultimately, I think, the new economy that we're going to see. And so I want you guys to just be processing that. I want you guys to be thinking about that. What are some burdens you have? What are some areas you're passionate about? What are some things you're good at? And what are some skills you need to develop? Why? So that you could leverage that to win the respect of others, to what? Make yourself useful, to add value, and to not be dependent on anybody. I know I'm getting really deep, and some of you guys are like, we just keep talking about business and career, and it's making me uncomfortable. Can we just talk about Jesus? Guess what? Jesus wants you to be a good steward. Jesus wants you to manage your time, talent, and treasure so that you can be a blessing to others. All right, hey, if you're watching this, give this video a quick thumbs up. If you're new, consider subscribing. If you want to stay in touch with me and my super phone, shoot me a text. We have the Bless God collection coming out Black Friday. This is one of the pieces. We have this in a different color. We're actually doing a giveaway on Instagram. Thank you, buddy. We're doing a giveaway on Instagram right now for $25 and $75. So you should also consider following me on Instagram. That's actually the best way to get a hold. Isn't Dave Chappelle not honoring his contract though? So what his point was, that's a good question, Josh. I think what his point was is that one, contracts are negotiable, by the way. Two, I think he's saying just because something was a contract and he had to hire lawyers that he found out were kind of friends behind the scenes doesn't make the contract right, and doesn't mean that those stipulations should be there indefinitely, especially when it comes to completely not paying somebody because there's a loophole. That's a good point. That's a fair point. I'm not mad at that. If you guys didn't see, I got a video called My 5 Mistakes of Running an Indie Label, and I actually was technically in the right, and I ended up giving an artist that I worked with his 50% of an agreement back just so that I could be reconciled and not right. And so I think, by the way, I think Comedy Central will end up doing the same thing.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.